Welcome back. This is Monty once again, owner of DPO's Advanced Equipment, spy company owner. And I'm wrapping up my 5-mile walk. I do my 5-mile walk for cardio exercise. So the crunching you hear beneath my feet is basically me walking along this trail for the last hour and a half approximately. But I'm wrapping it up, and I wanted to do a state of the Bitcoin crypto economy in terms of how things are going. We seem to be making decent progress. I think we're making the type of progress that we really don't want to take for granted. In the crypto space, sometimes it's hard to tell whether or not we're actually making progress, particularly when everyone is so focused on the price. But believe it or not, the price is just one aspect in terms of a metric to determine how things are going. And you typically don't want to use that as a primary metric. If anything, you want to put that as a lower priority in terms of looking at what else is going on. Developer activity is always important, in addition to progress we're making on securing the network, for instance. The network is more secure now than ever before, even when compared to when we were at $20K or $20,000 Bitcoin. Right now, and I think we're securing the network to the tune of, 17 trillion or 70 trillion computations per second. I'm posting that information on my website so that you guys can have some specific numbers if you want. But 79 terahashes per second as of July 20th. Those are significant numbers, meaning that if you were a hacker, you would have to get computational or computing power that's at least that type of number in order to compromise the network. So in other words, the Bitcoin network has more computational power than most all supercomputers on the planet. So you have to harness all the supercomputers, and then you need like 100 years or more or something like that in order to compromise the Bitcoin blockchain network. In addition to that, we're continually a moving target in terms of we're not standing still, not for quantum computing, not for any other type of technology on the horizon. It's just a moving target. So anyway, we're making significant progress in that aspect. Also, if you haven't heard, interest rates in the economy, the worldwide economy, is heading towards zero. So this is also good news, because Bitcoin is typically viewed as a safe haven asset, a store of value. And see, when you can't get a decent return because stocks don't really present the type of attractive investment that it used to, because the federal government and central bankers are all pumping free monopoly money into the stock markets in order to keep them up, that's not good. That's not fundamental value. Fundamental value typically means there are actually products and services being sold, and that is representing how the prices are going up in the stock market. If that were the case, it would be fine. But I'm here to tell you, stocks in the stock market is being held up with inflated money printed by central bankers and Federal Reserve people, and that is not a good metric. So don't use that as a good metric to determine whether or not the economy is strong or not. Banks, for instance, are losing a lot of money. JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo are indeed losing money because their mortgage servicing rights aren't as attractive. You don't make as much money in a lower interest rate environment as you do in a higher interest rate environment. So we want to be aware of that. Moving right along, what else? Central bankers right now are in agreement on the idea that they can only lower interest rates so much to stimulate the worldwide economies, including the United States. So now they're looking at, in addition to, prevalent negative interest rates worldwide, now we're looking at stimulus. So in other words, if you fail to stimulate your economies in the United States or outside the United States with low interest rates, and when that stops working, then you need to start looking at stimulus. Now, I don't know if the United States is going to get to that point where you start turning on quantitative easing again, pumping money into the economy. But this is definitely something that's happening in Europe and other economies. And usually because these economies are so interlinked, this is what happens. What happens in Asia, what happens in Europe and certain countries eventually works its way over to the United States. Because most of the profits, most of the revenue for American companies, the larger ones, are indeed derived from larger Fortune 500 companies. So you got to keep that in mind. Where is the money being made? Outside the United States or inside the United States? And most of your larger companies, McDonald's, Intel, Microsoft, Apple, and stuff like that, those guys derive most of their revenue from outside the United States. So when those markets start slowing down, guess what happens? The major companies aren't able to make any money at all in that environment. Weak corporate earnings. A lot of corporations are indeed reporting very weak corporate earnings. Now, this is another metric you got to pay attention to. When the Fortune 500 companies, the S&P 500 companies, New York, most companies traded on New York Stock Exchange, when they're reporting lower earnings as compared to higher earnings, that is not a good sign. That typically means we're not making as much money, and we need to guide your expectations to a lower and lower level. That's not good. And most companies right now are reporting lower earnings. As a matter of fact, there's a term being bandied about right now. It's called earnings recession. That means most of the earnings are going to be very low for an indefinite period going forward. So that's a metric, a very significant metric you want to pay attention to. And that typically means most large companies, or if not most of the companies, large or small, they're going to be reporting lower earnings as compared to higher earnings. Very important. What else is going on? In the Bitcoin economy, we have a need there's a need for virgin Bitcoins. In other words, since we have more institutional players, we have the Fidelities, we have the NASDAQ companies, we have the BlackRock, we have Ameritrade, E-Trade. A lot of these companies are going to be doing custodial services for their institutional clients. And they are looking at what we call virgin Bitcoins. Bitcoins with a history where they haven't been circulated or associated with being transferred about very much at all, if at all. They're called virgin Bitcoins. And there's a thriving market, just so you know, that virgin Bitcoins are typically untainted. They haven't been circulated pretty much at all. And there's a great deal because institutions want to be able to say these coins aren't associated with any transactions. They're very unlikely to have been involved with anything nefarious, as if, that should be an issue. Because, as we know, the dollars in your wallet and purses, all of them have cocaine residue, all of them have feces, all of them have, you name it, associated with them in terms of how they were handled, what they're associated with. So anyway, the crypto community, because the government is so ignorant about what it means to have, a currency, whether it's crypto or not, they want to make believe that it has to be absolutely pure when there's actually very little things that are actually pure, whether it's fiat or digital currency or whatever. What else is going on? Um, the balked futures are going to be doing some testing in anticipation of getting approved by the CFTC, I think it is. And right now, today's the first day where they're going to be actually doing some testing for futures, physically settled futures, actually being delivered, are going to be delivered to the actual customers when they settle their futures contracts. At some point, this is going to be a reality, hopefully, and whether or not it's factored in or priced in, it's a guess. But anyway, that's something that we've been anticipating for a long time, and we may be getting to that point. The good news also is something we want to pay attention to. This is a quotation. Bitcoin, an unstoppable force, says U.S. Congressman at crypto hearing. There's a congressman, I think his name is McHenry, at the last congressional hearing where Facebook was called to testify. There's a congressman by the name of McHenry. He's talking about how Bitcoin is definitely unstoppable, and he's one of the few people that actually understand what they're up against. Another quotation, he said, "We should not attempt to deter this innovation. Governments cannot stop this innovation, and those that have tried have already failed." That's what he says. And I couldn't agree with him more, and a lot of people are really going to have to get their heads around that and understand Bitcoin and cryptos are here to stay in one form or the other, and everybody else is going to have to adapt to it and get used to the idea. So these are just some of the things that I could go on and on forever, but these are just some of the things that are going on in the new crypto economy, the new crypto space, and keep focused, pay attention, and accumulate whatever you can when you can of Bitcoin, whether it's Satoshis or actual Bitcoins or whatever, fractions of a Bitcoin, whatever you can do, because things are definitely looking very positive, and the price is going to fluctuate. It's very volatile, but overall, this asset class is the best performing asset class despite the volatility. But the trajectory is definitely upward. And the Bitcoin, just so you know, the Bitcoin network is moving $3 billion daily. That's up 210% since April. Okay, so that's something you don't want to take for granted. Okay, and so anyway, there's I could go on and on and on. In terms of why you should be optimistic, why you should learn about it, why you should research it, and why you should have no more than 10% of your portfolio in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, okay? So anyway, the weather is picking up, and I need to finish up my walk and get back home and relax. But yeah, do your homework, do your due diligence, and go to my website when you get a chance, because these articles are all on my website, and I back them up, preserve them indefinite, so that they'll be there forever into the indefinite future. And if you want to be an expert or sound like an expert, go to my website and take advantage of that information. That way you'll have the facts, okay? And you'll be able to speak intelligently on this matter. So anyway, we'll let you guys go, and you guys have a great day. Thank you. Take care. Bye.